Broad participation enables priorities to correspond to the needs of those who will implement and those who will benefit from the research priorities. As such, the prioritized research will be better response to societal and policy needs, increasing the overall credibility of the exercise and the potential impact on health and health equity. Broad stakeholder involvement may prevent unnecessary duplication also. So implementation, research priorities, 3 dimensions: public health benefit, scientific feasibility, and time scale, funds and staff wise cost. Methods for deciding between priorities, you all know most of these, but we need to focus on at least 2 of this. After consensus, matrix based approaches like Delphi and CHNRI method. I would take this opportunity to have the ear of DGCCRS leader and decision makers, policy makers, that focus on research capacity, capability on such methods as advanced research methodology workshop should also be initiated parallelly somewhere. That CHNRI is very important technique to have our capacity built on those things. How to delineate between priorities? Grouping priorities into essential, desirable or beneficial, we will be deciding on all these things, what priorities to choose. How, why not the priorities which I have listed? Why we should go for what Tanuja madam is saying? So we need to have whether they are essential, desirable, beneficial, or by ranking the top 10 priorities. Participants can be given a system of voting across all the identified priorities in order to produce a metric to help the decision, or participants can be given a certain number of votes to distribute across all priorities. Very interesting kind of methodology. Where there is a large number of priorities and the coverage needs to be broad, participants can be given a theoretical quantity of units. For example, 100, everyone gets 100 votes, and they can put all the 100 on just one priority, or can distribute 5 each to whatever priorities they want to weigh. Then comes the step of publish, but that will be later on. But reporting guideline for priority setting of health research, reprise. Supriya ji and Bhushan sir would like to focus on this also. A very important reporting guideline. We generally tend to overlook because we focus on guidelines like consort and all. Next steps is a regional consultation, which we will be having very soon in August. Therefore, that deadline of August 20th, Ravi Narayan sir has said, we will be having 2 more such meetings before that. And then the ball lands in the court of Geeta ji for global consultation.
Thanks for inviting me here for this session. In fact, I would also like to say the thanks from the center's point of view, because this is a major exercise which we are taking globally, and then we are actually building on from national representations which go into regional consultations, and then we take up a global area. The reason is nations have their own priorities and regions have their own, and globally it might be a combination of many. So this is a iterative process, and this first of all, I would like to thank the Secretary Ayush for having taken this suggestion from our side, just a suggestion, very seriously, and have taken this plan forward and organized this meeting. And also thanks to the CCRS team entirely, especially with the leadership of DG Dr. Ravi Narayan Acharya, for having conducted at such a short period of time this program. We, to be frank, we didn't have enough time to dwell deeper into this, but at the same time it has been done and convened really professionally. Thank you for that. We are talking about setting research priorities for traditional medicine in the Indian context, and thanks to Dr. Pavan for having given the broader idea about how research priorities are looked at by WHO. Why is setting research priorities important? Support for research-based information on or evidence to integrate traditional medicine into the health system was one of the main ask, or the main ask of all member states. More than 90% of the member states asked for it in 2010, 2013, and as well as in 2019. Even now, we are conducting a global survey. The same kind of thing is being coming up. So this is the main ask from the global community, that we need to have priorities on research. We need to have priorities on what we should be investing in, we should be integrating into our system, and where is the evidence for it. For creating this kind of an evidence, you require continuous and focused research happening at the country level. And this is something which is absent, or rather very rare, in traditional medicine arena. So as part of creating leadership along with global leaders like India and China and other countries, we are helping to bring this together and try to create a global agenda for this. That's one of the main reasons why we are doing this. As we know, traditional medicine plays a major role in healthcare systems globally. It addresses public health and enhances the credibility while being integrated with traditional medicine health systems. And also, there are other opportunities which has come up during this period, like health and well-being of the people and the planet has become very important, and traditional medicine has a lot to offer there. And in fact, UHC, PHC, universal health coverage, and through the public health, primary health care program is becoming more and more important and becoming more and more valid across the globe. Scientific and technological advancements had given us the opportunity to look into traditional medicine more deeply and understand it with the capability which we never had about 10 years before. And the industry is growing. It's becoming a $1 trillion industry which covers wellness, natural products, and bioeconomy. Holistic, personalized care is becoming more and more of a necessity, and there are political commitments across the globe, like for example BRICS or for G20, which India has led those movements, where traditional medicine is being discussed very, very seriously. Biodiversity, One Health, pandemics, indigenous people stewardship, etc. are becoming core focus of discussions across the globe, and we need to rebalance the leadership on health. Health is not to be led by any single system. Its health is to be led by as is required by the society and as per requirements of the community. So we need to have a slight realignment there, which of course need to happen and can happen only if we work very focused in this area. There is a lot of lack in traditional medicine research. It's a circle. It's not something which can be pointed out in one single point. We cannot say traditional medicine lacks research because of this particular area. There are multitudes of areas. I had just tried to bring together a few of them for your, just to remind you, these are the areas where we are looking at for questions or gaps. So I would call them structural fault lines, which had happened into the society over a long period of time. It's not something which had just evolved, last year or maybe not 100 years, but it has evolved while this new society developed. New structures in the society developed. So we need to identify this and work on that. So one of them, the major problem which we explained earlier, is the unavailability of quality evidence. It's because of lack of methodology, lack of quality research. And then lack of resources to do research, lack of skills, lack of infrastructure, lack of knowledge resources, lack of research priorities. We don't have a research priority, as we explained earlier, and lack of policies which will help for integration of traditional medicine, lack of political will, which is connected to lack of stakeholder buy-in, and lack of supportive worldview. Worldview has a major important stature in this, and worldview is defined by what we communicate to the world, how we communicate to the world, what are the contents of that communication. That is major, and that can happen only with proper research and evidence. And lack of trust due to this worldview, lack of worldview, lack of evidence, lack of stakeholder buy-in. And when there is no trust or not enough buy-in, then of course the political will is less. If there is no political will and cannot understand why put resources into traditional medicine, of course there is no resources that's going to come our way. Therefore, there is lack of financial allocation. And still, that again goes to unavailability of quality evidence. So this is a cycle which we have got into. This is a kind of a cycle which we need to get out of. What are the questions that we should ask? What is it that we are lacking? That's what we want to know from you. We are not looking at, like, as Pawan said, like, every one of you would be able to make a 1 hour lecture or deliver a very beautiful presentation on what is lacking. That's not what we are looking at. We are looking at very, very specific point. You say, okay, this area we need to do research so that there can be an impact. I'll come to that. But what I'm saying is, we are not looking at large kind of information chunks. We are looking at very specific points of information or knowledge gaps where we think we should be investing on, where you think India should be investing on, so that traditional medicine can grow to a global map. Traditional medicine can have an impact in its society. It can also have an economic benefit for the whole of the world as well as for India. Planning, implementation, publishing, and evaluation. So these are the 4 areas which put in a single circle we do for research priority setting. So we need to define the objectives. Like, why are we doing this in any area? We need to find out why we are doing this. In fact, I would like you can define your own objectives in your mind and say why we are setting this research priority. Each of you hopefully should be thinking differently. You should then that will come out with a we can bring that together and try to bring out what is the best available for all of us or useful for all of us. So define why we are doing this research priority, why India needs to invest and prioritize research in traditional medicine. What is your thought? That is something which you need to think about in your mind. What changes do you want to make? What do you see if you do this, if you make these changes in 10 years' time? Where do you think we are going to stand in 10 years' time if you make these changes? Please think about that. That's what we want. That change, impactful opinion is what we are looking for. And also please review what we have, what has already been done. One of the main things which has happened in the history of reviewing on strategies for traditional medicines to follow in India, or advancement of traditional medicine, was in 2017 in Pune, when Dr. Bhushan's under leadership, we actually had a strategy discussion on how traditional medicine research should move forward. So that's a base document which we can look at. Like, if you look at what all the councils have been doing in the past 60 years, what have they specifically been focusing on? That's a great area to start with. Okay, what kind of an advancements we did, what was the outcome, and what was the missing point there. This is something which we really like you to do. For example, we have a great, an example here with TKDL. So what happened positively for TKDL is something we should look at, because that's something probably we can extrapolate into other areas of research. In today's exercise, fortunately, Dr. Rabi Narayan Acharya and his team had brought together certain 4 areas for discussion. I'm not saying that we should stick only to these 4 areas. These are the 4 themes, broad themes. But specifically, these themes seems to be covering most of the areas which we can think about. So there is no need, in fact, from our side to have a new theme. But if you think a new theme is useful and you can bring that in, you are welcome. We really want that to happen. So these themes are drug research, traditional medicine in public health and clinical practice, theories and principles of traditional medicine, tools, technological innovations, and trade. So these are the 4 major areas where CCRAS and the councils. I think I'm sure that all the councils have been had a consultation on this and came out with this. So we are talking about, in these areas, do we have any specific suggestion, any specific area where you think further investments on research, focused investments on research can have an impact 10 years later, can have an impact which is useful for the health of the nation, can have an impact for the whole sector in terms of its growth. That's what we are looking at. For example, while we are doing this, try to divide them into domains such as basic or fundamental research, implementation research, discovery, drug discovery or developmental research, policy, health finance, etc., etc. You can even look at health technology assessment as a way of integration if you want to. So there are several areas where, as you think about it, please also think about where your suggestion is going to fit in this domain. Please be very specific about it. If you don't have it, that's fine. Your question itself is good enough. But if you have an additional comment, please add where you would put it there, where you would put it. And again, you always should think, is it appropriate? Is your suggestion appropriate for the context of India, context of the system that you are representing, context of where you are thinking we are going to stand? Is it relevant? Does it have any kind of relevance at this particular moment? We can talk about AI, robo delivering medicines across traditional medicine of traditional medicine across the country, but that is not in the next 10 years. So does it have a relevance to talk about it right now? We can do it. It will probably read there. But are we going to talk about that in the next 10 years? Don't we have more pressing areas right now? So that's something which we need to think about in terms of relevance. Can we have feasibility? Like we can talk about going to the moon with a traditional medicine made a fuel, like a rocket, like I'm just saying. But is it the feasibility of next 10 years? That's what we are looking at. Is it feasible to do it? Anything that you suggest, it can be grandiose, but please be sure that it is feasible to be achieved in the next 10 years.
Dr. Professor Rabi Narayan Acharya and his entire team of CCRAS. My close friend, Dr. Pavan, we sit together in Sierra and we have an opportunity to talk a lot on what is possible in traditional medicine. Dr. Geeta, Dr. Professor Bhushan Patwardhan, and all our very esteemed experts here today. सबसे पहले तो मैं प्रोफेसर रवि नारायण का बहुत धन्यवाद करती हूँ और CCRAS की इंटायर टीम का कि मुझे आपके बीच में अभी चंद दिनों में 2 बार आने का मौका मिला. पहली बार तो जब ये इसकी तैयारी कर रहे थे, एंड आई थिंक लेट अस गिव हिम अ बिग हैंड, दे हैव डन अ ग्रेट जॉब. जब मैं पहली बार इनसे मिली तो आई वाज वी हैड अ डिस्कशन ऑन सम ऑफ दीज एस्पेक्ट्स एंड आई मस्ट कॉन्ग्रेचुलेट Professor Rabi Narayan and his entire team for delineating these 4 topics and for having all of us here. We are truly blessed today because we have the best experts here to be able to help us to move forward on this very important agenda. मैं आयुर्वेदा या आयुष में एक्सपर्ट नहीं हूँ. मेरा जो एरिया वर्क है that relates to intellectual property rights, trade and health. कई बार जब मैं आपस में, but I have been called from time to time, निसारी जी यहाँ बैठे हैं, I can see मनचंदा साहब, we have old friends here. I am called from time to time when the interface of trade and health gets discussed. And I will share a few thoughts with you. You are the experts. But I think some of the things which have come to my knowledge in this area, and I think they are very critical, are a few things which are maybe useful for our discussion today, and we might be able to get something out of it. I actually thank Professor Patwardhan because आपने जो भूमिका बांधी in terms of looking at research beyond drugs and medicines is very critical. So my suggestion is that we perhaps should look at the whole area of research for traditional medicine in 2 streams. In one stream, we are actually looking to see the equivalence of Ayurveda in terms, and Ayush, all the Unani and other traditional medicine products, their equivalence in terms of allopathic medicine. This is one thing that we look at. And in this, when we look at the global scenario, Geeta talked about the WHO system. The critical part when our products move across different countries, और जब countries को हम legally बात करते हैं तो we call them jurisdictions. In that, the drug regulation becomes very critical. And WHO is a group of international countries who have come together, 194 countries. So if anything has to be accepted by WHO, it has to be accepted by all the 194 countries who have to agree to it. And I think if we have to look at a way forward, one way is to look at some of the developed drug regulatory agencies and see how are they looking at traditional medicine products. And if we can just have a look at how they are doing it and then see where our research can fit in so that we make an impact there, that may be critical and very useful. And we will speed up the process. We will also get speed in our research. और जहाँ तक हम रिसर्च की बात कर रहे हैं, I do want to flag to you that about 3 or 4 weeks earlier, I'm also a member in the Ministry of Environment Committee, which is looking at digital sequence information. जो डिजिटल सीक्वेंस इंफॉर्मेशन है वो हमारे प्लांट बेस्ड और आयुर्वेदा रिसर्च के ऊपर बहुत इम्पैक्ट लाने वाला है, because they are going to look at the whole, and incidentally this is under the Ministry of Environment, and in that they are looking at what stage of the plant based product or Ayurvedic product do we need to look at intellectual property rights and ownership. Is it at the level of protein? Is it at the level of DNA or RNA? At what level? And in this context, we need to follow some of the discussions which is also happening in the Ministry of Environment and the Convention on Biodiversity, because that is going to have a major impact on our research aspects over here in Ayurveda. And I think this is something also that we need to keep in mind. There is a huge scope in it, but we need to have our preparation right in order to make it happen. क्योंकि हमारे researchers जब इसके ऊपर इतना काम करेंगे तो उनको आगे इसको कैसे ले जाना है वो बहुत ज़रूरी हो जाता है. I mentioned drug regulation, and I think some of us know, क्योंकि यहाँ कुछ इंडस्ट्री से भी लोग आए हैं, कि जो हमारे products अभी across jurisdictions जाते हैं, they go as food supplements. And the reason is that in 1994 in the United States, there was what is called the Dietary Supplement and Health Education Act. This is DSHEA. And they regulate these food supplements and these Ayurvedic products differently. इसका हमें एडवांटेज भी है और डिसएडवांटेज भी है. एडवांटेज ये है कि जो बर्डन ऑफ प्रूफ है, जब एक नया फार्मास्यूटिकल प्रोडक्ट डेवलप होता है तो जो ये बड़ी कंपनीज हैं, दे हैव टू टेक द क्लिनिकल ट्रायल्स डाटा, 1, 2, 3, 4 clinical trials, all of you are familiar, and they have to prove the quality, safety and efficacy. I think Professor Rabi Narayan mentioned about quality, safety and efficacy, and so did Pavan. So they have to justify that there is QSC in it. Whereas in pharmaceutical, the Ayurvedic products, the burden of proof is reversed. So unless it is proved that there is a problem with the product, it is at the port of entry in import, it is allowed into the countries. And the reason why I'm talking about US FDA is because जो US FDA है, आज भी जो सारे नए ड्रग मॉलिक्यूल्स या प्रोडक्ट्स इंट्रोड्यूस हो रहे हैं, इट इज़ द US FDA दैट इज़ गिविंग द फर्स्ट अप्रूवल. द EMA, कोविड में थोड़ा सा इसमें फ़र्क पड़ा था इन वैक्सीन एरिया, बट अदरवाइज EMA जापानीज़ की जो इनफैक्ट जो जापान की एजेंसी है, दैट टेक्स अबाउट 8 or 9 months मोर, बिकॉज उनको ट्रांसलेशन भी करना पड़ता है जो फार्मास्यूटिकल कंपनीज़ हैं वहाँ प्रोडक्ट की अप्रूवल लेने के लिए. So basically what I would like to say is that when we are looking at the first band, which Professor Patwardhan clearly defined, that हमें सिर्फ drugs की area देखें या, and we look beyond drugs, which is the second part, I think we should, as he has mentioned, we could concentrate on. In this first part, these aspects become very important, and I would encourage all of you, you are dealing with the products, how is it that we can keep this in mind and move forward. It is very critical that we don't make, even the Ministry of Environment doesn't make it difficult for our researchers to do research. So to that extent, even DSI, as I have just mentioned, that needs to be defined in a way. Currently that process is on, it is not yet complete. And I think this is where today's deliberations जो आप कर रहे हैं, these are very critical, and they can be brought before the Ministry of Environment also, so that they can benefit our researchers and Ayurveda as we go ahead. The second area I think we need to say, as has been mentioned, is the uniqueness of traditional medicine. आज भी जब हमें ज़ुकाम होता है, हम सबसे पहले एंटीबायोटिक नहीं लेते हैं. We go by our grandmother recipes कि अदरक और शहद ले लें. And these are some of the products which we know work, and we need to know how to put it forward in terms of making this happen in the field. And if we do that, we will save our country, not only lot of country and internationally, lot of the side effects that some of these modern medicine products bring. So I think this is something that perhaps we need to keep in mind, and it would be useful for us to have a look on how to move forward. I do think that we are very, we have done such a lot of homework has been done in these 4 areas. I don't think they could be defined better. And I echo the idea that when we talk about research, let us not just look at drug research. In fact, it would be useful to see what is the research that is needed for entry of these products, and how is quality, safety, and efficacy defined across various parameters, so that we are able to make our case before the global center better when we look at traditional medicine. So I think this is another area that you need to look at. Let me share with you, मैं पीछे Thailand गई थी, and Anjali, I think Pawan, you know her very well. She was the earlier director. She once told me कि एक snake bite की medicine की herb है, which is very effective, and she said it is regularly taken by the people over there. But she herself admitted that, I am so scared to suggest that over to the modern medicine practitioners, because if it doesn't work, 1% chance, then I have to take the blame. And this is where some of the research that you will be doing will be very critical in terms of how we move forward. So these are some of the thoughts that I thought I will share with you. I do request Professor Rabi Narayan, request to each one of us is, we have a very full day. If we can actually look at where we want our research priorities in the next 6 months, in 1 year, in 3 to 4 years, that will be very useful. I was just talking to Dr. Anoop. They have some very useful data in terms of their work in tuberculosis. Now, the end tuberculosis globally is perceived to be in 2030. Perhaps we can use some of that data and see what worked in TB patients in their institute in Jamnagar. I know they have very rich data, and we could probably do some kind of a reverse clinical trial information and see whether we can put it up as an important publication and see how to move forward. So these are just a few of my suggestions.
Respected Secretary Vaidya Rajesh Kotecha ji, distinguished guests here, particularly those on the dais, where I'll begin, Dr. Geeta Krishnan, Professor Rabi Narayan Acharya ji, Dr. Manisha, Dr. Bhushan Patwardhan ji, Vice Chancellors of different universities, advisors in the Ministry of Ayush, directors and DGs of research councils, my esteemed colleagues, and all the participants of this consultative meet. Let me begin by congratulating Dr. Acharya from CCRS for hosting this consultative meet. I'm so glad and grateful to you that you extended the invite to me, because only after coming here I have realized what a useful meet it is, what a useful event this is, and how well timed and required event this is. This is something that we have been talking about. I'm new to the ministry. I've been here only for about 3 months, and this is something that I have been thinking about, that perhaps we need a roadmap for research collaboration. We need some kind of place where we bring all these stakeholders together and put our brains together, put our heads together, and find out really which is the areas in which we need to move ahead. The ministry, as a policy making body, has finite resources. We have funds which we put into research projects, but which are the areas, priority areas, where these funds should be invested, so that we have a clear goal, and where we reach a particular goal, that is the need of the hour. And I'm so grateful to WHO and to CCRS for bringing all these stakeholders today to actually carry out this work. And I'm also very happy to see almost the who's who of Ayush sector here. As I said, I'm new to the ministry. I've been hearing various names. I have been talking, I have been interacting virtually, but it's very nice to see everyone in person, and I'm sure it's true for many others. Coming to the role of WHO here, once again, I have been as in charge of the international cooperation. I've had the privilege of interacting with WHO on various occasions. Recently, we conducted the G20 side event in Brazil, where WHO extended its cooperation. Now, other than this, there was another event in Siddha, where we collaborated with Siddha, with the WHO on setting some of the benchmarks for Siddha system of medicine. During these two occasions, we have seen that WHO brings together its unique expertise, its research methodologies, its global perspective to the field of traditional medicine. And I feel very fortunate from this the perspective of the ministry that we are collaborating closely with WHO and taking their guidance and support in carrying out this important work in the Ministry of Ayush and setting up the research priorities. Now, one of the areas where we need the support is on the research, and this meet is an example of that. Now, when we talk about Ayush or these traditional systems of medicine, we find that it has its own strength. Like as Dr. Manisha mentioned, even today when we fall sick, we do not immediately reach out to antibiotics or to allopathic or modern systems of medicine. We try to look at what is available in our kitchens, in our houses, or what our grandmothers or have told us as the home remedies, the so-called home remedies for treatment of various diseases. That is nothing but form of Ayurveda, which has got so deeply integrated into our lives that we think of it not as a system of medicine but as something which our grandmother told us. But actually it shows how deeply integrated Ayurveda is. Not only Ayurveda, the other systems of medicines as well, the Ayush systems of medicine. That is how deeply integrated it is into our daily lives. And we have seen this efficacy, and that is why it is so integrated, why it is still accepted, and that is why it is still practiced. Now, Ayush or traditional systems of medicine have several other strengths as well. For example, its accessibility, its affordability. We use what is available in our homes to treat ourselves. Its efficacy. Over and over again, tried and tested methods which we have used, we have found effective, and therefore we continue to use them. Its acceptance. Nobody really questions it because at home, when we use it for personalized healthcare. Now, if we do a kind of SWOT analysis of Ayush systems of medicine, we have several strengths and we are already using them and we are beneficiaries of that system. But when we go out in the world and try to establish it as a system of medicine, we encounter its weaknesses. Now, for example, when we compare it or when people compare it to the modern medicine, they say, where is the research? Are there any research papers? Are there any publications? Is there any validation? I think Dr. Bhushan mentioned that when we go to yoga, when we search on Google about yoga, we find that it is almost on the top of the Google searches, its efficacy is established, but when we go to the Google Scholar, it goes really drop down into the menu. Now, this is the area where we are not very strong, because for many years its deep acceptability and also somehow greater integration and research funding of modern systems of medicine, it put us all behind. So this is the area we need to cover. This is the ground that needs to be covered, and it is these kind of consultative meets with stakeholders coming in and bringing diverse perspectives to identify which are these priority areas, which are these gap areas, which questions to ask, and which road to take so that we cover these gaps. Now, this particular event is going to cover that perspective that will bring from what I am handling currently, and that is the subject of schemes in the ministry. So I handle schemes, that is the center sector schemes which do the funding for research projects. Now, in the last 3 months, at whatever little review that we have done of the various research projects, we have these Ayush Swasth scheme and the Ayurgyan scheme. Repeatedly, we have encountered certain gap areas. I will make a mention to them, and I don't know how they will fit into this overall discussions that will take place during this event. But if they can be somehow incorporated or utilized or find a place in the discussions, I think it will cover one of the gap areas which I have noticed. The first part, as I think Dr. Patwardhan also mentioned, is capacity building. We have research projects coming in requesting for funding, but over and over again we find that there are that the projects which come in, the sheer documentation or the format in which the proposal must be put up, or how to form the research question, that itself is not proper at times, and we go back and forth on forming that research question as a what is the objective of this proposal, How do you want to achieve it? What is the methodology? We find that we have different diverse capacities in this field. So we have proposals coming in from different organizations or institutes, but there is great diversity in the way they formulate the question. So I think capacity building in research methodology, in documentation of research methodology, and how to conduct clinical trials, how to document those clinical trials, I think that part really needs to go into some place where we are putting the funds. Because unless we ask the right question, we will not get the right answer. The second part is about identification of areas. We find that there are multifarious institutes, multifarious proposals which come to us, and there is sometimes, because they are not connected with each other, one institute in Kerala comes forward with a proposal on carrying out a research in certain area, and almost a similar proposal from Maharashtra, almost a similar proposal from some other part of the country. Now, because we don't have mapping of the research, ongoing research projects in the country, no centralized database, we somehow get into this duplication business. Therefore, perhaps what we need to do is also research mapping of different projects going on, so that we know that there is not only no duplication, but also we build one project and build upon the previous research which has been done on the subject. So this is where the roadmap question will come in. Once we have the roadmap, we know, okay, we need perhaps 10 projects on this subject, and then the next stage we need another 10 projects, and that's how we do maximum utilization of funds that goes into funding the research projects. The third thing is collating the outcomes. So again, probably 100 plus projects that we have funded under these schemes. We have different outcomes, but that is the many a times, it is perhaps too early for me to make a comment on that, but there are many a times that is where it ends. It's a 3-year project, it ends. But what were the outcomes? Can we integrate those outcomes into policy decisions that the ministry makes? But that will happen only when we have a database, only when we have a publication, only if we have a particular committee which looks into, okay, so these were the 100 research projects that we funded. Now these are the outcomes. Can we somehow integrate them into policy making? That is also one of the gap areas that we have noticed.
Thank you. This new CCRS website. Now I will proceed with exchange of MOUs, memorandum of understanding between CCRS and Shri Krishna Ayurveda University, Kurukshetra. So I would invite Ayush University, Kurukshetra. So I would like to invite the Vice Chancellor of Shri Krishna Ayurveda University, Kurukshetra.
Something you please, sir.
And drug development, capacity building, and knowledge sharing with training in the field of Ayurveda.
Good morning, dignitaries. Professor Patwardhan ji, Secretary, Minister Ayush Bhavana Saxena ji, Manisha Sridhar ji, Dr. Geeta Krishnan ji, all dignitaries of the dais, Professor Ravinarayan Acharya, the DG, the Vice Chancellors, Professor B.N. Gangadhar ji, advisors at Ministry of Ayush, and all experts who is participating, diverse expertise. The Ayush chairs came from different parts of the country. My namaste and sincere gratitude to you all. This today's event particularly will have a great impact on the future of research in the Ayush sciences, that all we know. The only requirement is that we need to actually document in a way that we can, later use this opportunity to capitalize and to implement. That is the only thing that is required. I also compliment WHO, Zero and Global Traditional Medicine Center, Jamnagar of WHO to collaborate and to guide in these unique initiatives. I am aware that into this meeting we have not only researchers but we have healthcare providers, policymakers, industry, all are participating. So it's a multi-stakeholder consultation and we are taking their inputs, which is really required. We also know that all of us are having some of the other exposure or expertise to the research in the area of Ayush. But when we look at the big picture, that we also have set these 4 priorities. The big picture is that unless we have a large-scale collaborations, we cannot achieve the high-level evidences which can be translated into the actual policy and implementation. So I am happy that that's happening in last few years, and I compliment our leaderships of the research councils, all DGs, and our leadership of our institutes. I forgot to mention that we have the leadership of institutes are also participating today.